The Operation Lebak in 1973 was a major military campaign by the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, to counter the activities of the Moro National Liberation Front, MNLF, in the Lebak area of central Mindanao. Defending Mindanao. In June 1973, the 1st Composite Infantry Battalion, 1 SIB, was on the attack. The objective was the MNLF camp at Barrio Lebak, 92.4 kilometers southwest of Cotabato City. Its mission was clear: destroy the enemy camp. It was a tough order. A series of bunker trench systems guarded the camp's entry point. Threading through the steep hills and mountain ranges was painfully exhausting. The cover and concealment provided by the thick vegetation lessened the military's air advantage. Tran River on the south was an obstacle. Undeterred, the young soldiers were proceeding in a zigzag path when they were met by a hail of machine gun and rifle fire. Dive, dive, dive! For a few seconds, the men stayed down behind rock cover. The rebels' firepower kept them from executing the planned maneuver. Leading the attack was Greg Honason, PMA 71, the commander of one company of the battalion. His unit had already been in Lebak for 3 months. The 1st CBA and a company of the 22nd Infantry Battalion were organized as Task Force Comet and placed under the control of Lieutenant Colonel Madrino Muñoz. Its initial mission was to relieve the PC elements in Lebak and conduct operations against Datu Giwan Mastura's rebel forces. The first few days were spent on patrol. It was easy. But this time it was different. A real war, Greg thought. Clearly they were in a disadvantageous position. Greg made a quick decision. There was a gap in the enemy position on the left, so he calculated that his men could swing to the left flank to infiltrate that weak point. Using a hand signal, he ordered one squad to move left while the other soldiers on the right fired some shots to cover the flanking movement. Again, machine gun and rifle fire emanating from the top of the hill kept his men from gaining ground. Hidden in the hinterlands of Barrio Lebak, the camp was chosen by the MNLF Cotabato Command as their main logistical base. Headed by Datu Ali Sansaluna, the command had direct control of the central Mindanao MNLF forces, numbering about 5,000 to 6,000. The base was an excellent choice. It had the advantage of terrain. The coastline was deep, and the mouths of the Tran and Tran Peju rivers were navigable enough. The military suspected that Volvo Penta motorboats and Kumpits were bringing in arms and ammunition from Libya and Malaysia since 1972, and distributed to MNLF units in the central plains of Mindanao. In case the rebels needed to withdraw, the sea afforded a convenient avenue of escape from pursuing land forces. Short bursts from automatic machine guns continued non-stop. Compounding Greg's problem was the uncooperative weather. The cloud ceiling was low and did not favor an airstrike. They had to be on their own. At the north and northeast side of the area of operation were the 4th Infantry Battalion under Major Rafael Maniago, the 554th PC Company under 2nd Lieutenant Ernesto Hermogenes, and the 531st PC Company under 1st Lieutenant Generoso Israel. Greg had met them during the Task Force Comet Coordination meeting presided by Lieutenant Colonel Muñoz, who was also concurrently the 1st SIB commander. The troops also met stiff resistance from the defending rebels. Despite the military assault, the MNLF troops would not budge, indicative of the massive manpower and armaments they had for their base's defense. Abandoning the area was far from their minds. They were convinced that they had the capability and firepower to pursue a positional warfare in lieu of a war of movement employed in guerrilla operations. For them, the war was winnable. Greg sized up the situation. Landmines were planted on the axis of attack. Rebels were well entrenched behind coconut tree trunks in strategic positions. Being on higher ground, they were protected by the hill from direct fire from below. Snipers were positioned in tall trees. Scattered bushes and some coconut trees were the military squad's only shield against sporadic fire from the rebels. Greg's main worry was the rapid demoralization of his men. Casualties were mounting. Cotabato was just 30 minutes away by helicopter, but air rescue was problematic because of the risk of being fired upon from the ground. Worse, the onward flight to Cotabato would not be possible because of poor weather and possible aircraft damage. Under intense fire, he signaled the 3 men on his left to attempt another flank movement. Bullets grazed the side of the tree trunk a few feet above his head. While crawling and seeking cover, a sniper opened fire and hit him. Immediately, his squad formed a human shield to protect him from further enemy bullets. Greg was well liked by his men, and they were willing to take bullets for him. Though seriously wounded, he refused to leave them. Because of the loss of blood from his wound, he would go in and out of consciousness. Every time he became conscious, the first words he would utter were, "How are our men?" As the battle raged, the Air Force Advance Command Post received an urgent message. At Lebak, rebels were inflicting big casualties on assaulting Army units. The pilots had no inkling who the casualties and wounded were. The battle area was just 15 minutes away, but it was already unsafe to fly because it was past sunset. The cloud ceiling was low, and their helicopters were not equipped for night flying. They had no night vision goggles that allowed images to be produced even in total darkness. Perhaps the mention of Greg's name as one of the wounded helped in making the decision to mobilize 2 helicopters with 1 gunship to assist the extraction of casualties and wounded. But they had to do it fast before total darkness would make the mission impossible. Air Force pilot 2nd Lieutenant Gabriel Mainet and 1st Lieutenant Libby Bronner flew the helicopter with the mission to extricate Greg, while Air Force 2nd Lieutenant James Santos were in another helicopter to secure the evacuation. Red Capunon acted as forward air controller. In a daring maneuver, the UH-1H helicopter, piloted by Bronner, flew on top and in between trees to reach the landing site. It was already nighttime when the helicopter skids touched down. When they got hold of Greg, blood was oozing from his wound, so they had to put pillows on the wound to stop the flow. The normal extrication procedure was to have separate flights for the wounded and the dead for morale reasons. For this mission, they had to carry all bodies, dead or wounded, because there won't be any second flight that night. Libby had to force Greg to board the heli. The latter didn't want to leave his men. "Greg, you have lost a lot of blood and you may die," Libby pleaded. He finally acceded. Greg was airlifted on the next available flight to the military's V. Luna General Hospital in Quezon City. While confined, Greg was awarded 3 gold medals for gallantry in action in the fields of Lebak, Jolo, and Zamboanga.